Okay, let's label the kidneys together or the urinary system. But before we do that, let's go over a few things. Functions of the urinary system. There are four functions that I like to think of. Number one is filtration. Filtration. Number two is reabsorption. Number three, excretion. Number four, secretion. So many things are filtered out of the body, including we've got some water we don't need anymore, so that goes away. We've got some ions and electrolytes, some drugs, some toxins that we don't want in our bodies. All of these go out of the body through filtration. While filtration's happening, sometimes the body decides, okay, I want some of this back. I think I'm lacking some water. And if I'm lacking water, there is inadequate water, our body might reabsorb the water, or the body might reabsorb sodium, or the body might reabsorb potassium. So some things are reabsorbed, and then as we're filtering and reabsorbing, we eventually come up with this substance called the urine. Urine is then released out of the body, and urine is a mixture of a lot of things that we end up not needing, and that's filtered out of the body. And then the kidney or the urinary system also secretes substances. We have at least three things that I know are secreted by the urinary system. And secretion is that it basically means the urinary system is responsible for the manufacture and release, or it plays an important role in the manufacture and release of certain substances. Examples are renin. I'll have you look up what that is because of time. Erythropoietin and calcitrol. Okay, so those are parts of things that are secreted by the urinary system. So let's look at the urinary system and the kidney. The urinary system has four main organs. There are other organs that are important, but there are four main organs, and I want to show that to you here. These are plastinated specimen, so which means they're real, except for the fact that they've been plastinated. The most important organ that I see here, well, I shouldn't say most important. Number one organ is this, the kidney. And this is usually located towards your back. So retroperitoneum, peritoneal space. So these are the kidneys. And off of the kidney, after urine is produced in the kidney, it's sent through this vessel here called the ureters, or ureters, as some of you will say. And so the ureters will take that liquid called urine that's got a lot of things in it, and it's going to bring it here into the sac called the bladder. So the bladder will then send it down to the urethra. So those are the four main organs of the urinary system. Okay, next up, let's label the actual kidney. Okay, so the actual kidney we're going to label, and instead of me labeling that, I'm just going to describe it here. So I will not label it here, I'm just going to describe it here. So here on the outside we have the capsule. Okay, the capsule, you can sort of see it, it's just this layer that covers the kidney made up of visceral peritoneum. Okay, the capsule. And then we have here, I hope you can see this, we have we have the cortex. So capsule on the outside, cortex. And the cortex is important because that's where a lot of blood vessels will end up going to. And on the blood vessels that I'm going to describe to you shortly, they go into the cortex, and filtration starts in the cortex and then continues here in the medulla. This is called the medulla. All of this is called the medulla. Okay, here in the medulla you have these different pyramidal shaped structures. These are called the medullary pyramids. Pyramids right here. Okay, between each medullary pyramid you have what you call a medullary column. So these are columns. Okay, all right, and so we've got that. And then we've got the columns end in a little undulation or little right there, this angular thing right here, that's called the medullary papilla. The papilla is similar to the same type of papilla that you see in the integumentary system. It's like an undulation, a papillary layer. So that's the papilla right there, okay? And then also I want to show you this. This darkened space right here is when urine, after it's been filtered, is going to go and collect here. Here it's called the minor calyx. The minor calyx, okay? And as you go further down, you get to the major calyx. And then from the major calyx, you're going to get to this region right here, which is called the renal pelvis. And that's where all the urine is going to drain to. The renal pelvis is continuous with the ureter, okay, or ureters, okay? That's the renal pelvis. You can see here we have blood vessels that come into the urinary system, into the kidney. Here, this is the renal artery, and this is the renal vein. Renal artery, renal vein, okay? And so again, renal artery, renal vein. Oh, sorry. Renal artery, renal vein, right there. Okay. And then the renal arteries and veins will end up becoming segmental arteries and segmental veins. So before it enters, so we've got segmental. Actually, yeah, I got that wrong. This is renal artery and renal vein. Artery right there, vein right here. And then we've got the segmental artery and vein. So up here, segmental artery and vein. Renal artery and vein, segmental arteries and segmental veins, and then those become smaller arteries and veins that I will describe to you shortly. So those are the major parts of the kidney. Let me see if I missed anything here. I did not. Okay, hopefully I did not. But I want you to be able to label this, okay? So look it up and label it. So the next thing I want to show you are basically the blood vessels that go into the arteries and the veins. So for filtration to happen, it must start with blood vessels, okay? For filtration to happen, it must start with blood vessels. So if you go back to the screen here, we've got these blood vessels, and I'm not going to label all of them. I'm just going to, because I want you to do this. I don't want to give away the answer. But we're going to start with the aorta. So this is the aorta, and this is the vena cava. And those are going to become the renal artery and renal vein. So that's vein, artery. And then before it enters into the kidney, it becomes segmental. And after it enters, the segmental are going to become, they're going to go through the lobes. This is lobe. Through the lobes, they're going to become interlobar. And then from interlobar arteries and veins, it's going to arch at the top here to become arcuate. And then the arcuate are going to go into the cortex, in where it's going to go into the tinier lobes, where it becomes interlobular. Lobular is just tiny lobes, and these are the interlobular. And then the interlobular are then, so we've got interlobular, are then going to go and become what we call the efferent and afferent. So this is the afferent arterial, efferent arterial. The efferent arterial and the afferent arterial, they go and come out of the, what we call the glomerular capsule of the nephron. Glomerular capsule, or renal capsule, or Bowman's capsule of the nephron. The nephron is the unit. This is the nephron. That's the unit of the kidneys of the renal system. The capsule houses what we know as a bed of capillaries called the glomerulus. These capillaries are fenestrated. which means they're going to allow the blood comes in, and they're going to allow some things to go through and some things not to go through. They're holy. They've got holes in them. Holy, HOLEY. Okay, so the afferent arterioles go into the Bowman's capsule, where it becomes the glomerulus, and then comes out as the efferent arterioles. Okay, then from the glomerulus we have these group of vessels known as the peritubula. Peri means around the tubes. So around the tubes of the nephron, you have the peritubular vessels or capillaries. And those are going to end up becoming what we know as the vasa recta. The vasa recta wraps itself around a region of the nephron known as the loop of Henle. And then that is where ultimate exchange happens. Some things are going to be reabsorbed, some things are going to be let back, and mostly reabsorption in the vasa recta. And then we're going to have a situation where it goes from oxygenated blood to deoxygenated blood. Then deoxygenated blood begins to leave the nephron, and then becomes the interlobular veins. So we've got, I'm gonna try to find it. We've got interlobular veins, and then the interlobular veins become the arcuate veins, and the arcuate veins become the interlobar veins, and the interlobar veins becomes the segmental veins, and the segmental veins become the renal veins, and the renal veins goes to the vena cava. So that's the journey of blood. Now the importance of this is that blood must come into the kidney, right? We've got kidney. Blood must come into the kidney to deliver filtrates, or things that are going to be filtered, substances. After they are filtered, it must also leave through the efferent, and then there's a bunch of exchange within the kidneys. Okay. All right. So let's talk about the nephron. The nephron here is a structure that helps with the filtration, reabsorption, and excretion. So these are the important parts of the nephron. So let's use this one right here. So as you can see, parts of the nephron are found in the cortex, and parts are found in the medulla. So the nephron would look something like this. See, all these blood vessels are right there. So the nephron would look something like this. Go down there, like that. Okay. That's what the nephron would look like. And the first part of the nephron is the Bowman's capsule. The Bowman's capsule is responsible for housing the glomerulus. And then the glomerulus is where oxygenated blood is brought to the nephron, and where filtration is going to happen. Okay, and so we've got filtration happening in here in the Bowman's capsule. We have the afferent arterioles coming in, and then the efferent arterioles leaving, and then these are here are the interlobular artery and vein. And then here we've got the efferent. The efferent then becomes the peritubula. Again, this is all peritubula. And then here we've got the vasa recta. Okay, so the other parts, the non-blood parts of the nephron. So we've got the Bowman's capsule. The Bowman's capsule quickly becomes the proximal convoluted tubule. This proximal convoluted tubule is a series of cells that allow thin layer of cells that have a villi. They allow for passive transport of water and nutrients and electrolytes. Okay, so that's where most reabsorption happens. And then we go here to the loop of Henle where concentration happens. So loop of Henle is where urine is concentrated, which means you're going to remove as much water as possible from the urine. So water goes back out into the system, okay? And then if you notice, the loop of Henle becomes thicker up here. It becomes thicker up here because this is impermeable to water, but allows permeable to salts. So it becomes thicker. The loop of Henle then becomes the distal convoluted tubule. The distal convoluted tubule looks a lot like the proximal, except it doesn't have villi. There is some reabsorption that happens here, but this reabsorption of the distal convoluted tubule is typically inspired or instigated by hormones. Hormones such as antidiuretic hormone or vasopressin, hormones such as aldosterone and angiotensin 2. So that's the distal convoluted tubule. It's very similar to here, which is the collecting duct. The collecting duct also does a little bit of reabsorption, but not much. So there's some reabsorption of water and urea, and at the end of it, we have the release of urine to ureters. Okay, so those are the main parts of the nephron. So reabsorption, excretion, all of these happen right here in this structure. And as you can see, the structure is found right here in the medulla, and some of it found in the cortex. Okay, let's take a look at it again. This is the Bowman's capsule, which houses what? The glomerulus, which is blood vessel. And then when filtration happens here in the proximal convoluted tubule, what are we going to get reabsorbed? We have glucose, amino acids, proteins, vitamins, lactate, urea, uric acid. Some of this will get reabsorbed. Some of it will get released into the lumen of the nephron, which includes urea, uric acid, creatinine, and other drugs. Those will go into the lumen, and into the lumen, what do we have? We have a journey into the loop of Henle. Journey into the loop of Henle allows water reabsorption. So it's the main site for water reabsorption. If you are a kangaroo rat that lives in the desert, you're going to have a longer loop of Henle because you want more reabsorption of water. You don't want to lose any water. And then as you go up the loop of Henle, you're going to find out that it gets thicker. And it gets thicker because the cell types here in the loop of Henle, ascending loop of Henle, are more responsible for salt reabsorption. So not longer water reabsorption, but salt reabsorption happens here in the ascending loop of Henle. This is called the descending loop of Henle. Then in the distal convoluted tubule, we have more reabsorption, but this, like I mentioned, under the direction of hormones. Okay, and then we have the collecting duct, and then to ureter. Okay, I hope that makes some sense, and I'm glad that you guys are starting this in lecture soon, which means you'll be able to understand even better. Okay, there's one more thing I want to mention, which is the juxtaglomerular apparatus. Juxtaglomerular apparatus. And that usually happens when you have this loop right here around the collecting duct and around the ascending loop of Henle and the distal convoluted tubule. You have this structure right next to the Bowman's capsule. When you have that structure next to the Bowman's capsule, it's called juxtaglomerular apparatus, and it's a complex. It's actually not so complex. It's more of, there are cells here in the distal convoluted tubule called the macula densa cells, and these are going to interact closely. They're going to be very close to the Bowman's capsule here, and that interaction between those two blood vessels, that closeness, allows the body to sense what the blood volume is and what the blood pressure through the nephrons are, and that allows us to determine should we make more substances to be released out of the body, or do we keep more substances in the body? That's called the juxtaglomerular apparatus. Okay, I think I'm going to try to keep this to just 20 minutes. I think I did that. I hope you're able to watch this video, and I hope it helps. All right, good luck. Thank you. Okay, let's label